You're not going to be able to hear it.
Okay. Well, you're missing out on all the very excited chatter going on. We're talking about each of the cars and what designs they did. It's kind of a long video. Let's see if I can skip to the part where they're actually racing. Let's see. So you can see, everybody has got different concepts at play. They tried. They're about to start the race now. And their rule was they wanted to see who could get to 10 meters first. And while we were racing, we decided 3 meters was better. They did not make it 10 meters. It was about the slowest race ever. Of 3, so there were 4 groups. One group were not even satisfied enough with their car to even race it. One group's car didn't go at all. And then 2 cars went. One raced pretty far and then just stopped. And then that little white car went really, really slow, and it, slow and steady wins the race. they're really, really excited. So, let's see if I can get back to my PowerPoint now. On their evaluations, that showed up pretty, not surprisingly, overwhelmingly, everyone said that was their favorite lab. And they, I didn't ask them I just said, give me your feedback, and everyone said, oh, we loved building that car. That was our favorite thing we did in all of physics. So.
I think it helped reinforce concepts and all that stuff.
Yeah, because they really had to understand torque. I mean, torque is such a hard concept for students to grasp, but until they actually saw how little torque 18 millimeter wire gives, versus something bigger, 18 gauge wire versus like 12 gauge wire, they really started to understand what it would take to create a motor that could actually drive a car. So, our rinky-dink motors is just, one spool of wire, but when they end up going to a motors class, then all those concepts are now much more solidified in their brain because they've got this experience, this hands-on experience that stands out. And so hopefully they remember the concepts when they get into their motors class. That's the other problem. I think we asked all the engineering faculty last year, what is it your students aren't learning in physics? Basically, when they show up at your door, what information have they just lost that they should already know? Because I feel that way about math, and so it's concerning to me that your students who I have had don't remember their physics. So
it's hard to remember Gauss's law. That's one that
it is.
No one
it is.
remembers.
Yeah, and that one, moving
with
gravitation to 222 really helped. So I start electricity and magnetism by talking about gravitation and gravitational fields, and then I keep reminding them when they don't understand electric fields and flux. This would be the equivalent in our gravitation model, our planetary model. I think that helps maybe half of them, but it's such a hard concept.
It'd help if Fluke came out with a gravitational meter.
Yeah.
You can see it digitally displayed, right?
Yeah, that would be.
Those are kind of the high concepts that I don't know of any fun, build a car thing that talks about the electric flux out of the, volume, or, out of some closed volume is proportional to the charge enclosed in the volume, but that's central to electromagnetic, so it's difficult.
It is difficult. There might be a FET simulation, so that's another thing that I've incorporated a lot. My night class is an hour and a half shorter than the day class, so I was sort of forced to drive some of my content to the web. So then in order to get ABET certification, I had to make up that hour and a half. So what I do is I create a worksheet and then send them to these online sites where they have to do some kind of activity and answer questions. I do a lot of PhET simulations. That's created by the University of Colorado, and there's physics and biology and chemistry and anatomy and physiology. So there's tons of different topics that they have PhET simulations for, one of which might be an electromotor, or viewing the electric field and placing charges in that field and seeing how the vector field would change based on where you place charges. And then there's silly games in there too, so you can like place magnets and then have an electron try and get into a goal being pulled around by different magnets or electric charges. So I use those heavily. There's the University of Minnesota, those cooperative problem-solving problems, they have some on the web where it kind of coaches you through these very challenging problems. I use that a little bit, but I still have the same issues with it I do as implementing it in the classroom, because you have to put it in their specific format or else the program won't accept it. These ISO videos are great. They'll actually show an experiment on video, say of a pendulum swinging, and in the background there'll be some sort of tape measure so you can actually, quantify distances, and they'll tell you like the sample rate of the video so you can quantify time. And then I have them, so they can, experiments that we don't have time to do in class, this is a way we can do that at home. There's some physics video games. This link is awesome. It's called Velociraptor, and it's a special relativity video game that's so fantastic. As the raptor runs faster, like the whole plane shifts. Anyway, it's cool. And then there's some quizzes. So if you guys are using Blackboard, you can do quizzes and whatnot. So that's getting towards the flipped classroom approach that I'm going to talk about. But doing more of these online activities frees up time you can do in class, other things, more lab time or more problem solving. Okay, so that's what I'm doing currently. If you guys have any questions about any of the things I touched on that I'm currently doing before I talk about the flipped classroom approach. Where are we at for time?
140?
140. Maybe I'll just save the flipped classroom approach for another day. So I've talked way longer than I thought I would. And then I'll let Jeff talk, and then that'll be good. Then we'll have something else to hear about when nobody else wants to talk. Okay. So I'll leave it at that then.
I can actually. The wrong button. No, that was the right button. Now it's back to the full size instead
Okay.
of the computer.
Okay. Do you want that?
I guess so.
So my perspective of the classroom technology here is different than the faculty perspective. I actually try to keep all of the faculty and all of the students engaged and happy with their classrooms. So one of the things that's different about Wilsonville as opposed to Klamath Falls is that I have worked hard to try to make the classrooms as flexible as possible so that you can teach all kinds of classes in all kinds of classrooms instead of having a single classroom that does this and a single classroom that does that, and this classroom belongs to this, department, or this classroom belongs to that department. Our campus size is fixed, and so the only way that we can get the appropriate amount of classes and schedule these classes here is to have as much flexibility as we possibly can. So the concepts and stuff for teaching that you guys sometimes would like from me, I really like to focus on the things that'll benefit everyone, as opposed to an experiment that would benefit one instructor, but then leave other instructors unsatisfied with that same experiment. So whether it's classroom rearrangement or different types of technology in the classroom, if doing something only has positive impacts and no negative, I am much more keen to help with that, and will try to figure out a way to get that done for you. But I encounter lots of projects where people would like something that other people would not like. Another thing is, let's see. So I also sometimes don't know what everybody likes, because I come here and I have 9 years of experience at OIT and have seen, every type of class in every type of classroom that we've had up here. And what I see is what I assume works for people. I don't know that people are, don't like something because they're just doing whatever, they're doing. So sometimes, like, I'll give you an example. Sitting versus standing. Some instructors like to sit, some instructors like to stand. So I don't know what way to design a classroom, because I can't make a classroom that only accommodates a standing instructor, and I can't make a classroom that only accommodates a sitting instructor. So if I knew that 80% of instructors prefer to stand than to sit, then I could do a lot. With that information, I could gear these classrooms to make more instructors satisfied with the way they're set up. But the way I see it is that a bunch of them sit and a bunch of them stand, and so I can't do something that makes the experience worse for one against the other, because I've done that before, and then the other side gets mad at me. So I don't really want to just change something to make one person happy, but also upsets the next person who has to use that same room.
But you're in IT, we're supposed to be mad at you.
Yeah, but I don't need to work to make people mad at me. So I can leave everything the same and keep that. So I do want to do things and help change things, and really, if I could get some sort of large feedback on certain ideas and things, that would help me immensely on what sort of stuff to work towards in the classrooms. I did a little bit of that during the all-staff meeting, asking who likes smartboards versus projectors. I know the arguments for both sides, but the question is who really wants one versus the other, because I can't, I can, try to make something go one way or the other, but I don't want to upset the people who liked the way it was, and now I've changed it on them. So things like that are difficult for me without lots and lots of feedback, to make sure that I'm not making people angry by making someone else happy. So really, what I like I said, my favorite things is things that don't make anyone unhappy, and then I can work on it and try to, I bet that's Faculty Senate.
There's no one actually here for Faculty Senate.
They're early, that's why.
Oh, I see.
I'm just gonna let them.
Okay, they can listen to us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's nobody there.
Okay. Fair enough.
They're just calling in early. So anyways, I really want to help people with stuff, but when you ask me for certain things, a lot of times I'm at odds with everyone else who uses your classroom space. With Lisa, it was easy because there were only two people who used her classroom space, her and Scott.
Tells her, yeah.
And so I only had to satisfy two people, so I could change to laptops. I could do stuff like that because I knew I wasn't gonna make 7 people upset by making 1 person happy. But in a lot of other rooms, we try to make them a lot more flexible like that. I just had, I just put in 4 new computers in one of our labs, and they said, well, what department should pay for it? And I said, it's used by all departments. Nobody should have to, no one department should have to pay for it. And they said, what are you talking about? Everybody uses it. And I said, okay, let me pull up the schedule. 2 writing classes, 2 REE classes, 2 MIS classes, 2 CSET classes, and registration is in there. What department pays for that? Nobody. So now Provost is paying for it, and we get new computers. But that's, that's what I am dealing with whenever you're asking me for something, and I really do want to help, but I just don't want to do something that then is negative for another thing. So upgrading computers is easy win-win. Nobody wants slower computers in the classroom, so that's an easy one for me to do. But I'd really like to work with you guys and other stuff on upgrading technology around here, but not in such a way that or at least get me some. I need some feedback to know whether nobody will miss the old stuff that I'm pulling out of the room. You know, if I were to, take away all the whiteboards, would that be okay with everybody? No, right? Some people would be okay. They don't need the whiteboards, but so when somebody says, "Oh, I want, put more screens in here. I don't need whiteboards anymore," then I have to worry about, is someone else going to come in here and be angry that there's no whiteboards for them to write on? So, anyways, that's where I come from when you guys ask me for stuff, is that I need to make everyone happy.
It seems like the labs are different, though. I mean, the labs have a few people, and they're very stylized kind of teaching, and I don't know, since I never go into a lab, but it feels to me that, just like what Lisa's saying, if she had no control over her lab and she got stuck with some generic brand Cheerio lab, she just couldn't do her job. So the classroom seems like we can make do pretty easily, but labs seem very different to me.
Go ahead, Travis.
Guys, let me jump in real quick. A lot of you hopefully have seen this survey that we've got up and running right now. So by Friday, right, there's an email that was sent to all faculty. It should have been sent to all adjunct faculty too. So we're surveying all the faculty, right, about what they want in classrooms. The first or second question is whether you're in Wilsonville or Klamath Falls. So we super strongly encourage you guys to respond to that. And I'll give you all the results from that for your Wilsonville subset of faculty. But we put the survey together to try to understand what people want and need. Because what Jeff is saying is exactly right. There's a few things that everyone's unanimous on. Everything's unanimous on, but there's a lot of things that people are really polarized on, and so we got to take that into account, figure out how to work with that. But we're getting lots of good responses from Wilsonville faculty, not just folks that are there in the room right now, but other folks as well. So spread the word and really respond to that thoroughly. Put in your comments, and we want to sort of collate those responses, and I'll pass them on to you guys there for sure.
I think that would be great, yeah, because a lot of times I just don't know. And the other thing is that from term to term, the people move in and move out of these classrooms too. Somebody might dominate a classroom and have 3 classes in a certain room, and the next term they're in a different room. And all the stuff that I set up for them in that room, I now have to either move or they're,
But that's typically not our choice. That's typically Ann's choice, trying to figure out where the stuff is, right?
But her hands are tied too.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not like we would choose in IT to be in the same rooms, but we're not.
Right.
And so that's kind of a moot point in a way. It's just like installing Visual Paradigm in one place, and then we end up moving rooms, and that means more work for you. And we prefer to stay there, but we don't have input on that. If what you're saying was we took that to the next level, we'd have a master list of the rooms and the capabilities of the rooms, and we'd match up the courses to those. But Ann's got 5,000 other jobs to do, and so she's not going to take the time to do that. but otherwise it's the same old thing, I want to be in 244, I'm in 203, you got to deal with it, and it doesn't matter what I need, right?
Right.
I'm not going to talk if you're going to point that.
Well, okay, fair enough. I'll just point it up here. There's nothing to see yet.
Okay. So I know we're about out of time, but that gives me a platform to launch. I think there are specialty rooms that we really need. Like Jeff and I have had a lot of discussions about a video teaching lab, which is like the only thing I care about in the world, apparently. But it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of planning, there's a lot of support, it's a lot of freaking work to get that to happen. And it's not a one size fits all, because like I'm trying to teach a video class now between here and Klamath Falls, and inevitably somebody uses the class right before us and they destroy the whole setup, and so we're 15 minutes late in a 50-minute class every freaking time, because if there's not an IT person coming in that's standing right there, it's a freaking disaster, right? And so that's never going to work, ever in the history of the world. So I think there's some specialty applications, like a physics lab. That's just not a classroom that you just come in and remake it. It's got to be a physics lab or a chemistry lab every time. And so I think there's got to be some of these spaces that we really put the energy in to keep them that way.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is communicating with other faculty, because there are people that want to use my classroom for the group work, and they've co-opted it during times when it's not in use, and that's fine. But I've had to email instructors and say, you're welcome to use my room.
Just don't mess it up.
Yeah, but put it back so that I don't have to spend 20 minutes replugging in my laptops and figuring out where you put stuff.
Well, yeah, and we have a simple lab down in the far corner by the lounge down there with these crapola tables, and the two instructors that use that this term like the U setup. We like sitting around looking at each other. But then somebody else uses it for a meeting, and they just come in and they reset everything. So every classroom we have to go in and rearrange the whole place again. It's not technology necessarily, but the video teaching class, there's 2 monitors and a camera. I come in, it's stuff down there, everything's unplugged, and I have to come in, 45 minutes, half an hour early to hook everything up every single time. That's not always possible, or it's not useful. So I get what you're saying, but I think there's more subtle nuances in terms of classrooms that perhaps we need to just bite the bullet and get some coursework in a few classes and not just being spread willy-nilly. Because if we don't have the same reason for scheduling as we have for using, it's never going to work. Right, it's always going to be, Ann's going to have to you just need a classroom with computers. Anything that says has computers, I'm going to stuff in there, right? And that's probably not enough granularity for us to get the scheduling right. That's just my 6 cents.
How does it work in Klamath Falls? I went to the CCT meeting during convocation, and they were talking about these active learning classrooms with tables that you can move and projectors on all these different walls. And they were doing all these innovative things. So is that room scheduled for certain professors, or how do they do that in Klamath Falls?
Travis can tell us more.
It's been building sort of organically over a year or two, so that the 1 or 2 classrooms are permanently set up like that, and people know it. We're adding in, as we have more people that want to use classrooms like that, we're sort of having to ad hoc go around and talk to people. So Greg is actually here, Greg Waterman, and we're working on figuring out how to sort of streamline that. But so, it's for sure, it's an issue that you got to pay close attention to and not step on any toes, but, try to sort of work together to come up with some scheduling that works for people. And so lately it's just been one person, me or Seth or a couple of us, that sits down with a schedule and figures out who wants to be where and goes and talks to people in person. And so that's part of the purpose of this survey, is we're trying to get a better sense of how many people want what, and who's frustrated by what, and we'll try to sort of do it in a streamlined way. And it might make sense to have someone, so like, we think we might need someone at Klamath Falls to just do that, to look at each term's schedule and figure out how to manage the rooms so that people are where they want to be. It might make sense to have someone at Wilsonville to sort of take a look at things and sort of talk to people and figure out, shuffle rooms and schedule some things.
You know, Travis, that's a really great idea. I'm sorry, that just triggered a whole new discussion for me, but, you know, we've got this big problem here where everybody's on block scheduling and nobody likes it. At least I don't like it. But our hands are tied because it's all or nothing. We'd all have to get off block scheduling simultaneously so we're not conflicting with other classes that our students need to be taking. And it's left to program directors to try and do the shuffle, but nobody's talking to each other. And so if there was one person whose sole job was to coordinate classrooms, coordinate the schedule, and find more effective ways to fit in these courses and the classrooms, I mean, that would be a full-time job, right? I feel like it could be. And Anne doesn't have the bandwidth to do it. She's got more than enough to deal with.
I'm sure she would love to give that up.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
We sort of decided that it is sort of a CCT job more than like the registrar's office. It's not really their thing. I suspect that the faculty senate probably wants their equivalent.
Yeah. Well, yep, I think we need to get going, so. All right. Well, thanks for connecting with us, Travis.
Good job. Thanks for being up there.